So cold calling is one of those things that a lot of folks really struggle with, especially early on when they're getting comfortable in a new role, or even as a more senior seller, just struggling with what to say, how to represent themselves, their product or service. So we know a script can be vital to helping reps become much more proficient in how to navigate a conversation, words and phrases that they can use along the way in a call or a presentation. Role plays and things like that can be pretty powerful to help people get comfortable. But the reality is, role plays never really represent the majority of what happens in real live call scenarios. And so when we think about the real world, we make a lot of calls, we talk to gatekeepers, we're navigating phone trees, we're getting a voicemail most of the time. Once someone says hello, it's so important to have a solid framework in place that is designed to maximize your opportunity to get to the next scheduled interaction. And so today, I'm going to share with you a framework that's engineered specifically to help turn cold conversations into scheduled next interactions. This framework is actually based on the work of Townsend Wardlaw. So Townsend put together this ebook a while back. If you haven't stumbled across it, I'd highly recommend reading it. But again, what we're looking at right now is we're talking about cold calls. We're talking about the ability to actually interrupt somebody not expecting my call and go from a interruption into a scheduled interaction. So Townsend likes to say that the goal of this prospecting is not to generate interest, excitement, or even have a conversation right at that moment. It's about changing an interruption into a scheduled interaction. With that context in mind, the script framework that we're going to use, and we've actually adopted a variation of this. So this ebook will go through his variations, and it's very well designed. It'll go through some core objections and how to actually engineer a conversation based on his best practices. I'm going to show you a variation of that on our side. But the idea is that its intent, this script, is actually withholding specific information early on. There's actually artificially inserted areas where we're breaking up the conversation to elicit responses. And the intent there, as he states, is to engineer so that the prospect is highly likely to respond in only a limited number of ways. And if you can get your script framework designed in such a way, then you're going to maximize your chances of actually being prepared for the 80 to 90% of the scenarios that appear. By doing so, you're going to be much more consistent and confident in your messaging and ultimately see your success go through the roof. So that's the ebook. I want to jump in and share a variation of that now, where we've broken down this script framework into 5 key sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first section is the intro. Now, this is the most important section of the call script. No matter where you read online, you're going to find that there's so many different ideas around how to enter a call. There's permission-based openers that work, and there's ideas that certain won't work. I'm going to tell you that the most important thing is about consistency and confidence. So getting into the conversation and moving forward to the next phase. In this case, the purpose and awareness sections for me are pattern interrupts still. We're strategically saying certain things just to interrupt that communication and get them to think again. And again, we're trying to elicit a specific response. So the purpose of the call, are you aware of us? These are engineered to get a specific action. I'll get back to those in a second. Finally, once we've gotten past that, we can actually move into our questions or value pitch. And this is where we're going to give our opportunity to gather some more information and then finally present the real reason for this call. And at the end, we want to have a clear call to action. So those are the 5 sections. What I'm going to do now is get back into the beginning of this and break down each of these sections one by one as we go through the framework. And then we're going to go back through, and each of these sections, we're going to come up with all sorts of examples where we can show that these words, phrases, and sentences work. It's based on Townsend's framework, and they're proven to get, let's say, 70 to 80% of your conversations from an interruption into at least being heard, a completion. But over time, I'm going to come back and actually share some different openers, some different purposes, some different questionings and value pitches and ways to use the conversation down lower. And then again, finally, different call to actions. And what we're going to do is not just share the script framework here, but we're also going to have live recordings of where it goes well, and in some cases where it doesn't go so well, and the why behind that. So stay tuned to actually see not only this specific example, but also other examples of where you can re-engineer different sections of the script to fit into your target audience, your objective, and your style of calling so that you're consistent and confident along the way. Again, the most important piece here is one, having the framework in the first place so we know where we're at in the journey. And then two, trying to engineer certain phraseology to elicit specific responses so that we can be prepared for them. So let's get into this example, and I'm going to talk about how it's engineered. If you read Townsend's ebook, he'll also share that this is all in a very similar framework, but this is how one example is being used today in real live calling scenarios that is scheduling meetings at a very high success rate. And if you're interested in seeing this live, you can always tune in to the live calling sessions. But let's get into this particular example. So the first thing when we enter into the conversation, we do want to make sure that we first listened and heard if the person uses their name or not. If the person doesn't use their name or not, we're going to want to confirm name. That's not written out here, but that's just something that sometimes people miss. But assuming they now say their name, we're going to introduce ourselves. Hi, Sally. This is Ryan with Lead Engines. I'm going to pause a little bit here. Wait. Some people won't say anything. Some might say hi. I'm going to make a little bit of adjustments along the way. But based on that, either I'm going to start a conversation or I'm going to move right into it. You're not expecting my call. This is the first time I've reached you. Do you mind if I take a half a minute to share exactly why I called? So what we're doing here is we're taking an opportunity to introduce ourselves, a little bit of a pause because different personalities respond in a different way. But it's not about just saying these words. It's about saying them in the right pace and the tone. And it's slow. It's a bit monotoned, slower than you might expect. And with this nice little pause here, you can also start to elicit scenarios where I might enter and say this is the name of the company, and right away they might say, oh, hello, hey, how's it going, etc. At that point, I'm going to deviate off a little bit, and I'm going to start to, respond. Oh, it's going pretty well, Sally. Thanks for asking. And then I'm going to go right back to it. You weren't expecting my call. This is actually the first time I've reached you. Do you mind if I take a half a minute to share exactly why I called? Okay, so that's the intro. The next piece of this, the purpose. The purpose of this call, as you were going to see here, is actually not, I don't expect them to actually take the meeting, but the words here are elicited to get a specific result. So the purpose of my call today was actually to find some time on your calendar to introduce my company. That way, I'm not calling you out of the blue, and I was just curious if you have some time next Tuesday or Wednesday. So I'm not expecting them to open up their calendar and book right now. I'm actually expecting them to say, hey, wait a second. You haven't told me what you do, or what is this about? So the purpose of this call and the purpose of this section is not to actually get them to want to take a meeting right away. It's actually to get them to basically say, oh, I'm sorry, tell me a little bit more. Explain to me what's going on. You haven't told me. Okay, great. That's giving me an opportunity to move forward. Oh, I could do a little dummy move here. Here's this little awareness. And again, the awareness here, this awareness statement piece, this section is not intended in a way, at least in this case, to think that someone's heard of us. Now, there are scenarios where your brand might be well known and you could use a version of this as well, but I'm eliciting the no and I can move along, right? So the awareness here is like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. You haven't heard of us. My company, Lead Engines, are you familiar with us at all? Because obviously if she was, maybe she'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. I was interested in learning more. Instead, she's like, what is this about? I don't even know who you are. What is this about? Perfect. Oh man, I'm so sorry. Um, have you heard of my company at all? Are you familiar with us? And you can go a little bit further on this. Maybe you've sent some emails. Some people will give that out there. The intent again is not for them to say, "Oh yeah, absolutely." It's no, I haven't. Okay, that's fan. That's not a problem. Now I can move into where I'm at. This is my question and my value statement. That's not a problem at all. Let me get right to the point here. Now I'm going to insert a question. Again, my intent here is to start the conversation. So do you have a tool in place right now that gives you the names and contact information of hiring managers that you're currently replace? Now, I expect them to basically start to say, yes, of course. We've got Zoom info and we've got lead, we've got LinkedIn, or we've got Cognism, we've got a data tool. Fantastic. That's awesome. How's that going? Get some more information, and then we can transition. This is the value pitch. This is your time to shine. We basically give them an overview of what this is at this stage, and then we move into the actual call to action. Any objection to finding 10 minutes on the calendar where we can configure this thing and give you some free leads? Yours might be to set a value, introduction, share some latest ideas and innovations around, product or problem, so on and so forth. Now we're going to go right into a clear call to action. If they say yes, fantastic, you can book. If they say no, hey, that's not a problem at all. Like I said, the only reason for my call today was to introduce my company. And is there any objection to me sending some information over email? We can follow up once you reviewed it. So this framework and sections, everything can be ripped and replaced. The purpose is to actually have a stage of the conversation where you are engineering the next phase. The first three here are specifically designed based on this framework to get to this section about 2 to 3 times more often than you would if you did something else. What most other folks might do is they'll have a permission, and then they'll just pitch their product. Hey, my company Lead Engines, we help sales leaders like yourself build lists without having to spend any time on the list so you can focus on actions. Any interest? And most of the time you're going to get to a no, because we're not breaking the pattern. We're not establishing that two-way communication. We haven't really broke away from the interruptive communication into the intent of this framework. So that's the idea here. And the nice thing about this structure is that in addition to these sections, you actually can engineer a certain amount of objections, right? Based on what we said already, people aren't going to say much more than a handful. This is outlined in Townsend's ebook, outlined here as well, right? We already have a solution for that. That was intended. We asked if we have the tool. Yes, we already have something like that. When I say, do you have time? I'm too busy to talk. That's, again, I'm expecting that. The sense of information that's kind of built into that. That's very obvious. And then no interest, or we already have people doing some stuff like this, is basically the bulk of what we're going to receive based on this script's engineered and the way it's designed. And if you take this and put it into practice for yourself and repurpose certain company information and the actual value pitch and start to run this exact same framework, I would be surprised if you didn't have only a similar number of objections. So now you can go in and fill those in over time and be prepared for what to say. If they say this, then we say that. Okay, so that is the main overview. So let's get in and try the intro now. All right, so now that you have the full overview, I want to start to break down each of these sections with some real live examples of what's working and what's not working, and some of the why behind certain elements here. So we're going to talk about the intro right now and some of the key elements here. So the first thing we want to think about here is the tone, the pace, and the cadence, the pace, the tone, and listening. So while the words are here, I need to be aware of what's going on. And just like we talked about in the main section, we might start to actually script out even further prospect elicited responses. If you like to have it here for your namesake, or just being prepared, this is where you can kind of wing it, if you will, or be prepared in your own flair to take something off track, but then bring it right back into the section. So, hi, Sally, this is Ryan with Lead Engines. I want to be pretty slow and methodical here. When you just picked up the phone, you're not really listening, and they're not probably hearing you. And so it's really important that you get past that section before you continue. If you just blast through this, you're going to have a different response. So let's go ahead and take a look at when this is slow and we're listening a bit, and we even deviate a little bit off and get back into it, versus when we just try to rush through it and what happens.
Hello?
Can I help you?
Hey, this is Ryan Reisert with Lead Engines.
Hi, what can I do for you?
Oh, yeah. You weren't expecting my call. This is the first time I've reached you. Can I take a half a minute to share exactly why I called?
Less than, but go on.
I'm sorry?
Jeff, quickly, yes, I'm on another call, but yes, quickly.
Yeah, gotcha. That's not a problem. The purpose of my call was really actually to see if it would make sense to schedule an introduction conversation between our companies. I was wondering if you might have some availability next Tuesday or Wednesday around this time.
I don't know what you do. What do you guys do?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Have you heard of my company, Lead Engines? Are you familiar with us at all?
No.
Okay. That's not a problem. Maybe actually it makes more sense for us to send some information on what we do first. Would it be okay if I sent you an email and then maybe we follow up next week if it makes sense?
Sure, at .com.
Fantastic. I can definitely do that. I know you got to get to a call there. I'll get that over to you shortly. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
So in that example, you can see that I'm a bit slow, and I had a name, so it's blinked out, but I had the name, so I went right into it. This is with Lead Engines. She says something that wasn't going to take me too far off, like, oh yeah, how can I help you, kind of. And then I went back into the permission-based opener. From there, she then said something like, hey, that's fine. I didn't quite hear her. I'm not just going to keep continuing through. I ad hoc it, but as the call progresses, I'm into the conversation now. So that's an example of slow, methodical, right tone, right pace, introduced myself, and we got started. Let's take a look at the difference between that call and this next call.
Oh, hey, this is Ryan with Lead Engines. You weren't expecting my call. This is the first time I've reached you. Do you mind if I take a half a minute to share exactly why I called?
We're not interested in any lead gen type of information. We don't need anything like that, so you can take us off your list, okay?
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. Do you mind if I share exactly why I was calling?
Dope. I go too fast. I don't, that's what a lot of calls sound like. Hey, this is Ryan with Lead Engines. You're not expecting my call. This is the first time I've reached you. Do you mind if I take a half a minute to share exactly why I called? Yeah, we're not interested. Take me off your list. Thanks, bye. That's very, very common when you don't slow down, be methodical, and establish that two-way conversation. Now, this third example that I'm going to share today is actually a even further variation. So let's assume that maybe one of the things that's happening is the name of your company elicits a lot of people to kind of make an assumption. Oh, we don't need any lead engines. Lead engines is a kind of a thing that could potentially trigger some folks. So instead of putting that name in the front, I just basically introduce myself, and then I do the same exact thing. I get right into the framework. Let's see what happens there.
This is help you.
Hey, this is Ryan Reisert.
Yes, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing well. You and I actually haven't spoken before. This is the first time I reached you. Do you mind if I take a half a minute to share exactly why I called?
Yeah, please do, because I'm actually headed to a meeting, so I just have a few minutes. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. You know, I actually have a knack for catching everybody running into meetings. So I'll be really brief here. The only reason I was reaching out really was to see if it would make sense to introduce my company. I was curious if you might have some time next Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe this time in the afternoon, or if you're usually in meetings, maybe another time later in the day.
I'm waiting. What's your company do?
Oh, yeah. So the company is called Lead Engines. Have you heard of the company before? Does that ring a bell?
It actually does. You do business-to-business leads and lead gen type of things like that?
Yeah, that's right. So we've got a tool that helps recruiting firms get you names and contact information for hiring managers that are actively seeking candidates that your firm can place. And they
Now,
basically...
is this using LinkedIn or is it another source you're using?
No, it's lead engines. So we've built our own proprietary B2B database that allows you to create similar searches that you would on LinkedIn, but it's not LinkedIn. So it's actually a really cost-effective cost alternative to LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but it also includes the contact information, right? So you're going to get a verified email, a LinkedIn social channel URL, and where we can find them now, we also have phone numbers. I don't know, do you guys do a lot of calling or mostly focus on social and email these days?
Yeah, we do both. We do cold calling. We do some. We have other sources to get key contacts, key decision makers, plant managers, HR people, etc. So, you know, I would like to spend maybe half an hour with you. You said next week is good for you?
Yeah. So if you're not opposed to it, the best way for us to proceed is we can set up some time. We can learn a little bit more about your ideal customer profile. We actually can configure a lead engine for you right on the spot and get you some free leads to try it out. How's next Tuesday or Wednesday looking for you?
Next Tuesday would probably be pretty good, actually.
Okay. Are you more of
are you in California or where are you?
I am. Yep. I'm just in Central Valley myself. It looks like. Are you out in Ohio?
I am.
Okay. Yeah. So that's Central, right? Or sorry, Eastern.
Eastern time zone. Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm looking at Tuesday after like maybe 1:30 p.m. my time. So that's what 9:30, 10:30 your time. 10:30 your time.
Yeah, that'll actually work perfectly. What's the best email for you?
It's
Uh-huh.
@jobs.
All right, fantastic. I'm going to get an invite over to you. We'll catch up next Tuesday at 1:30. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. I'll talk to you later.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so in that example, I slow down, I introduce myself, I pause, I wait. I didn't actually use the company introduction, and I went back in, and he said, "Oh, hi, how am I doing?" What did I do? I didn't just keep talking. I stopped. I'm doing well. You weren't expecting my call, and you can see the differences here. So, framework, it's not about just the words, phrases, and sentences and just reading them. There's an art and a science here. And so the important thing that you want to figure out is what's the right tone, what's the right pace, what's the right cadence, not just for you as a rep, but also for the prospect that you're having on the other side of the line. The advanced tactic here is that over time, you're going to be able to start to identify different personality types, and you can start to make adjustments with your tone, pace, and structure, but you don't want to move away from what you're trying to get through, right? So each section of your call requires you to get through it, pass through that gate before you make changes. And today we shared 3 examples of one where it works like it's supposed to, a second time where purposely I ran through it to show that if you just read it, it doesn't quite work. You got to slow down and navigate. And then a third example of where we've slowed down even further to break up the conversation. And again, the framework works as designed.